Alexander Borovoy had worked for 20 years in the dangerous zone, where he was in charge of scientific research. On October 21, 1986, at the height of the work on the construction of the shelter, he was found by Valery Legasov, academician, deputy director of our institute and member of the government commission, and taken straight to Sherbina's office. He broke the news. Apparently, a chain reaction had begun in the reactor. Alexander Borovoy tells how the events that followed unfolded. Together with other physicists, we began to investigate. It was clear that this was not a chain reaction, because we did not find any short-lived radionuclides signaling it. But what then? The easiest explanation was the temperature increase in the lower rooms of the block. At that time, the foundations of supports, on which supporting beams of the shelter were to be based, were being concreted. The concrete was being supplied from special pumps by pipelines to the supports. It was extremely difficult to control its placement because of the huge radiation fields and destroyed structures. As a result, much of the concrete was leaking into the lower rooms, flooding them and blocking the air that used to cool the fuel. Pretty quickly, we figured out the aerosols, too. It turned out that some zealous person had removed the measuring units from their place and placed them against the road where concrete trucks were constantly dusting. In such conditions, the radioactivity could have been measured 100 times more, not 10. But there was a hitch with the helicopter data. We began to sort it out, and this is what it turned out to be. Military helicopters were working at the site. Their equipment was designed to measure radiation above the crater of the nuclear explosion. That is, they can fly over the flat Earth surface and measure the radiation dose at a distance of 1 meter from it. And with us, the height of the object was 70 meters. So the pilots were instructed to divide the readings by 4. I made inquiries and found out that the new crew was transferred to Chernobyl from Afghanistan and the pilots just did not get the instruction. I reported all this to Sherbin. He gave me another hour and demanded more substantial evidence. My colleagues and I boarded the helicopter and hovered over the reactor vent. We took several dosimeters with us, including a Japanese one, which we took from Legasov, and photographed them and the helicopter's instrument panel with altitude and coordinates at the same time, so that we could see that we were not cheating. Sherbina, seeing the photo, suggested that we fly it for a few more days and check the result. Alexander Borovoy, right, and his colleague Alexander Perfilov. A few days after this incident, I did not sleep for several days and fell asleep right in the aisle at the government commission. A few days later, at another meeting, Sherbina looked at me. It would be interesting for us to know what science thinks about this. If it is already awake. People began to listen to me seriously. True, there were still conflicts. Once I reported to the commission on the premises we inspected. A high-ranking official from Moscow came with an inspection and was indignant. Why did you measure 7,000 X-rays in one place and 10,000 in the army? What kind of science is it that measures so inaccurately? I replied that we were not going to remeasure. In any case, it was clear that we could not work there. The official responded by saying that there was no need for underpants in Chernobyl. Before that, there was a slight buzz in the room. People weren't really listening. But after he said that, there was complete silence. No one threw around such accusations in Chernobyl. Yes, you might not have done your job well, you might have missed something. But to call a man who crawls for hours a day in a blown-up reactor a coward? After all, how are measurements taken under such conditions? A lethal dose of radiation can be grabbed in a few minutes, so a specialist runs past the dangerous place with a fishing rod, on which a special tablet is suspended. Throwing it on the accumulation of fuel, hides behind the column, and then pulls the pill and runs back, not on the asphalt path, but among the ruins. If he stumbles and falls, he can become seriously ill as a result. Kerchadavites in the danger zone. The second on the left is Yevgeny Velikov, the third is Alexander Borovoy. Chernobyl required experience, brought to automatism. A certain counter clicks in the head. Here you have to hide behind a column, here you have to duck to grab fewer X-rays and still get the job done. One day the young soldiers, whom I kept scolding for being careless, snapped at me, go and try to get a lower dose of radiation. I went and got less, even though I was over 50 at the time and I was not moving as fast. What was scarier in Chernobyl, radiation or stress? The most dangerous thing was radiophobia. In Chernobyl, people died of it in an empty place, without getting any special dose. That's how one of my comrades, a young physicist, candidate master of sports, died. He was sitting next to me on the sofa, leaned back and died, his heart stopped. When a second death occurred in our small group, I rushed to Kiev, to the doctors. Psychiatrists were sent to us, who explained that a person can experience the strongest fear of radiation every time he goes to the reactor, as if he were going to die. He hides this fear, he tries to cope with it, because there are other men walking beside him. It's like an attack, you can't not go. And that fear can kill in the end. Were you afraid? I'm more of a cowardly person by nature. Life is lived, now there's no shame in admitting it. But, if you will allow me, I will tell you about a man whom I consider a real hero. I met this old man in a black cassock, terribly thin and coughing, in a deserted Chernobyl in early '87. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the door of the church, closed after the accident, ajar, with a glimmer of light in the window. As I came closer, I heard him serving alone at the lectern, singing in a weak, rattling voice. I decided not to embarrass him and left, and later made inquiries at the soup kitchen. As it turned out, the girls knew him, but no one knew where this patriarch had come from. It was also unknown who had opened the temple to him. I wondered, where did he live, what did he eat? No one would give him coupons for a canteen and there was no other food in the area. It turned out that they used to feed him in the canteen, but it was difficult because they would serve us dinner with meat and he wouldn't eat any meat. A couple of months later, in the spring, I went to church again, the priest was serving all alone. In the summer I saw several women singing along to him from nowhere. I never saw him again after that. I think he died soon after. I still regret that I never talked to this man, I was too embarrassed not to know his name. When the situation in Chernobyl was more or less normalized, the fat, cheerful patriarch started serving services at the cathedral on holidays. But I consider that unknown man a true hero. In Chernobyl, we professionals were paid handsome wages. I, for example, received in the days when I worked in the unit, 7 times more than in Moscow. All conditions were provided for us. And he lived in someone else's house out of mercy, that's how he ate. To pray for people who did not believe in God. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends. Give it a thumbs up. Tell us interesting facts you know about the topic of this video. See you in new videos.